Recently, a friend of mine posted this meme about the difference between Bernie and Warren voters. It reads, Warren voter. I kinda like Pete, he's very charming, but Warren is smarter, I think. Kamala is also pretty good too, but I think I'm gonna pick Warren. Bernie voter. People in my family will die without these policies! I laughed and shared it, but then realized he was sharing it to make fun of Warren supporters, indicating he had a lack of understanding of how US politics works in the least. He's British, so he at least has that excuse. The problem with everything about this post is twofold and cuts to the heart of the divide in the 2016 primary. One is that a two-party system relies on a big tent coalition with people of varying beliefs and ideas to come together for a compromise they can all kind of agree on. Why no one is ever fully happy with what gets passed in Congress. A good compromise is when everyone comes away unhappy. With most of us who understand how government and compromise works, we're okay with certain past voting records because that was A, what the voters voted for and representatives represent their voters, and B, literally the only way anything will ever get done in Congress is through compromise. I recently had someone use the fact that Warren voted for the military expansion, completely dishonestly ignoring the fact that it was a massive budget deal. The kids in cages were being held hostage if Trump didn't get some of the funding he wanted, and the kids would be living in way worse and life-threatening conditions than they currently were in. Federal workers would go unpaid, and the government would shut down. More military spending at that point was a no-brainer compromise in that situation. When Obama got elected, people seemed to believe he was going to come into power with a magic wand and fix everything. They had delusions of filling in what he didn't say with what they believed in, and were mad when he never pulled the troops out of Afghanistan, something he never ever promised, and increased drone strikes to replace troops' lives. That disillusionment of Obama because they were new voters and didn't understand how politics works was one of the reasons why some even switched to Trump. A president has a limited set of powers. First off, he's the administrator of the executive branch, which involves deciding which agencies get more focus, work, and funding, so one administration under Republicans can focus on funding war, the war on drugs, ICE, and voter fraud, while the next administration can come in and focus on suing big banks and supporting the Consumer Financial Protection Agency and enforcing the environmental regulation. But they are limited to certain amounts of money that are earmarked to fund certain agencies by Congress. Trump has hollowed out and made useless any agency he doesn't like, illegally transferred money earmarked for one agency to a stupid wall, and limited the power of regulation or protecting minorities and so on. The president also has the power to make executive orders, which pretty much decide things within the executive branch as well, such as Obama blocking the DEA from busting people with weed violations in states that made it legal, and DACA, which lasted 2 years under Obama, only to be shredded under Trump and used as a bargaining chip. Trump also changed the executive branch to make an arbitrary law as to where asylum seekers can cross, and then when they cross, where they always did before, he declared them crossing illegally and separated kids from their parents and locked them in concentration camps, clogged up the immigration courts, and now won't let any asylum seekers in because of the lack of resources they created. The Congress also gave the president the power to send troops into foreign nations for 60 days without congressional approval, something I think should require at least a sign-off of either the House or the Senate Speaker, as no one should have that kind of power, much like the use of nukes should. That said, the Patriot Act expanded the president's powers even further, which is why Obama got involved with the Syrian crisis, as he was charged by Congress to deal with the war on terror militarily, and ISIL was pretty much the worst terrorist organization on the planet at the time. The GOP Congress refused to vote on any expansion or reduction in the war on Syria, so Obama was in a holding pattern, mandated by Congress to fight terrorism, but unable to expand or change tactics to actually be effective. Instead of giving him power or letting him stop, they instead just went on TV and criticized him for how he was doing it, knowing full well it was mostly their fault, just like Benghazi, as to why this was going so poorly, but they didn't want to take any responsibility for anything, and if they repeated it enough, people would believe it, and they did. Under Trump, the House under Paul Ryan even passed a bill to strip back some of Trump's military power for fear of how he could abuse it, but Moscow Mitch let the bill die, and we abandoned the Kurds. Obama also promised to close Guantanamo, but the GOP blocked any effort to do that after the 2010 election. Prior to that, he was working to draw down the number of Guantanamo. Obama and Pelosi were also all ready to give a single-payer or public option, but Harry Reid refused to end the no-effort secret filibuster that required 60 votes instead of 51 to pass anything, so we ended up with a better, but still not great healthcare system created by the Heritage Foundation and promoted by Reagan. The Republicans immediately attacked as socialism, even though it was the furthest thing from socialism you could get, except for the most impoverished people with Medicaid expansion. Obama was also a terrible negotiator, pretty much giving the GOP everything they wanted, and McConnell is now on record saying that no matter what, they would stonewall and call socialists anything Obama wanted to do. One of my biggest concerns about Bernie was my lenses were covered by my experience with Obama, and Bernie was known for being difficult to get along with in the Senate, and didn't work well with others, and refused to compromise on a lot. So I was worried that nothing would get done for the opposite reason that Obama couldn't get anything done. Ending the no-effort filibuster would force parties to actually take responsibility for their actions, even if we don't like those actions, instead of ensuring complete inaction and people then just view all Congress as being all bad and ineffectual. We would know who to blame. Obama promised everything Hillary promised, but more in 2008, and he ended up doing what Hillary promised in the end, if that, which is why I trusted Hillary over Bernie, even though I agreed with Bernie on more things, for her to be right about what she could and would do after I had voted for Obama, and he was completely wrong. With McConnell as a leader of the GOP in the Senate, I couldn't see Bernie having the political savvy to get anything through Congress even close to his liking. McConnell was actually one of the biggest reasons I voted for Hillary over Bernie. With an actually functioning government, I may have voted for Bernie. The president also has the power to sign or veto a bill, and appoint a Supreme Court justice along with all the lower courts, ambassadors, and heads of agency and cabinet members, which is probably their most important and long-lasting power, which we have all seen the long-term devastating impacts of a Republican president and Senate combined, as Trump has appointed more lower court judges than any president in history, thanks to McConnell blocking most of Obama's appointments from getting a vote at all, even though most of them would have passed with an up or down vote. Which is why, even if you believe both sides are just as bad, like with the Trump-Hillary choice, y'all fucked up and have seen the consequences of not voting for the Democrat, as these new judges will end up shredding decades of progressive precedent for the decades to come because people couldn't bring themselves to vote for Hillary. And that's pretty much it. All their powers. There's a reason Hillary refused to promise anything she didn't feel like she had the voting power to actually accomplish. One of the earliest political cartoons I remember was Bill Clinton as Pinocchio spouting campaign promises and breaking them because he couldn't get them through Congress. That impacted her heavily, which is why she didn't promise big things. The GOP owned the House and the Senate and won big in 2016. In 2018, the Democrats overwhelmingly won back the House, but the party was now made up of 50% progressives and 50% moderates, many of whom would have been Republicans by 1980 standard, so Pelosi only has certain things she can do with the vote she has. So the House is made up of probably 1/3 radical conservatives, 1/3 moderate conservatives, and 1/3 progressives, and the Senate is made up of mostly radical conservatives, unless we can win it in 2020. For all of Warren's plans, she'll only get through a modest amount, though, and have to compromise on it. For all of Bernie's promises, he won't be able to pass most of them. He can't bring a vote to the floor. He has to passively wait for the House, and then the Senate to pass it, and then he can sign it into law. He won't have any power to get the ball rolling on any of his plans. People like AOC can bring it forward, but then a committee has to vote on if the plan can even make it to the floor. Well, they'll pass a bunch of amendments, addendums, make changes, and possibly add poison pills to get it to the floor. Even then, it's up to the House and the Senate leader to actually allow the bill to come to the floor, and then unless we end the no-effort filibuster, it's still going to require 60 Senate votes to pass, which pretty much 100% ensures that single-payer will get watered down to just public option, no matter who wins the presidency, if we're lucky enough to regain the Senate and keep the House. That is why most presidential candidates are promising public option and not single payer, because they don't want to be called liars, and Warren isn't 100% on whether it's a better idea to not promise what we probably can't get, or to start off with a more powerful bargaining chip of going for Bernie's plan to ensure we at least get a public option. Even Bernie's plan starts off with public option and gradually shifts us to single payer, which is why I support it. But why, if you know anything about how bills become law, and most of y'all seem to have skipped Schoolhouse Rock, the president has little to no power in these areas. So focusing on the nitty-gritty of each of the president's policies is a fool's errand. Picking the president on both policy as well as effectiveness to navigate Congress and make a deal is what you want to base your decision for president on. So much of the 2016 campaign was picking apart what Hillary didn't promise because she knew she couldn't actually make it happen because of the Congress and her limited power as president. And now with the whole juxtaposing of Bernie versus Warren, it's exactly the same, nitpicking tiny details between the two of them and blowing up any perceived flaw as way bigger than it is. In my opinion, presidents shouldn't ever be allowed to promise about what only Congress has the right and power to do, and House and Senate leaders should have to have debates like prime ministers do for their parties, but Americans demand to be lied to and be promised things by presidential candidates. So if you're pinning all your hopes on Bernie or Warren to come be a savior, you're gonna be just as disillusioned as Obama voters were. A Congress is made up of so many different opinions, none of the socialist progressive policies will get through completely unless we change the makeup of Congress and educate red areas of the states on progressive ideas and how they're voting against their own self-interest by voting for Republicans. People like Ilhan Omar and AOC are more important long-term strategy-wise than Bernie getting the presidency. And until we have ranked choice voting or approval voting in every state like Maine now has, the presidential candidate will have to appeal to all the party, including the 50% that are essentially Reagan Republicans, and especially the black community, many that would be Republicans, but they know that the GOP be racist as hell. Don't get your hopes up. Don't pin all your hopes on the president. Don't believe the hype around your candidate. Pick the best one you think can help shepherd and negotiate the best version of their plan that in the end after passing through Congress will still end up probably the same bill no matter which president we pick. But it will still be way better than the alternative, and the notorious RBG can finally retire and we won't all have to have a panic attack every time she has another surgery. This understanding of the weakness and limited powers of the president is something most of us who are old hats at voting understood, but what newbies failed to grasp at all, and we couldn't see what they didn't understand and explain any of this, and with the troll and bot farm mucking up the conversation, we couldn't get past the nasty rhetoric of many fake Bernie and Hillary bots that pitted us against each other to reach out and understand this misunderstanding about how bills become laws and how presidents don't make laws. Congress does. Which is why that post is funny for people on both sides. People on the Bernie side view us all as wishy-washy, and Bernie as a great savior that will save the world. People on the Warren side know that it's up to Congress, and nothing the president promises will actually ever happen close to what they're promising after it makes it through Congress, and we view many of the Bernie supporters as naive kids who believe Super Bernie is going to come and save them, and they'll all die if he doesn't get elected. Sadly, that elicits condescension instead of understanding from our side, which just further generates animosity. None of that is even close to true. Bernie and Warren and Buttigieg and Biden and even Yang will all sign whatever makes it through Congress or veto it if they can't compromise, because that is all a nation and a government is. A big compromise of a bunch of different people who completely disagree with each other, and everyone comes away unhappy from a good compromise. People who understand that are pretty happy at an imperfect bill that didn't go nearly far enough. People who don't get mad if they don't get everything they want and pout. Vote your conscience, vote for what you want, but no matter what the person promises or proposes, Congress will decide what actually happens. So don't freak out and please get over the purity test, or we'll have 4 more years of Trump and the planet and the nation can't survive that. A big thank you goes out to Elias Garcia Guevara and Joe Taylor, who sponsor the show at $10 a month at the Wapawet level on Patreon. Please consider donating as well if you can, and thank you all for listening.